One of the things I remember, Grandma Moulder was little. I mean, that's where you got yours being so little, was from Mom and Grandma Moulder. And because I think all the aunts was quite a bit bigger than Mom, weren't they?
Yes.
And so, but Grandma Moulder was tiny. And I remember we'd come down the hill. We'd take off from Boeing and drive down. And Daddy used to say that a cup of coffee for a nickel used to cost him, what, 50 cents? Because he'd stop for coffee and all of a sudden 5, 6 heads jump up wanting some too. But anyway, we got down there. That's one memory I have about Grandma Moulder is that we'd open the door, and here she is, round, about as round as she is tall, and always had this white gown on. To me, she looked like an angel. I mean, this white gown. But I'd always look down. I made sure that I did, and I looked down, and then I'd see her little tiny feet, because she only had, about size 4, little tiny toes coming out, peeking out of that gown, and that's how I remember my Grandma Moulder.
She would come to the door. We'd knock on the door, and she'd come to the door, and she had to get on her tippy toes and look through the window. So you could see about this much of her face looking out the window to make sure that it was us.
We'd go down there, because that was one thing Grandpa told Dad when he married Mama. Grandpa told Daddy if he was going to give his blessing to Mary, that anytime Mom wanted to come home, he'd bring her home. Well, it got to the point, Daddy was the one that was wanting to come back. I really believe that. Dad was the one. And I remember he'd call Mom at home. We lived at Cheney. And Mom wasn't working at this time, but was there 6 kids, maybe at that time. He'd call from Boeing, why don't we go down to Max Creek? And I remember Mom would throw dirty clothes, clean clothes, all 6 kids, and we'd all jump in the station wagon and we'd come down here. I mean, that's kind of what his Mom would get, So we came and had a lot of fun down in Missouri.
Because I think you're right. Dad enjoyed going down and fishing with his brothers-in-law.
Yes.
Particularly George Kincaid. He loved going to
visit
George Kincaid. And they played cards with them. And,
night after night after night.
And so Daddy liked going down there as much as we did.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember having your picture taken in Oakland? Every kid that age
could have that picture with the hat.
It was early 50s.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Donna, some of the pictures we had as kids. Oh my gosh. And then you turn around and put them on Facebook where the world can see them. We talk about urchins. Well, I think it came from the Slusser name because we were urchins. Oh, I didn't even think about that until looking at this picture you've got where Tommy, I guess, must have given up his coonskin cap for one of the dolls. He was happier with one of those dolls than he was.
He played with one of your dolls. I had mine, and Tommy and I were buddies. So there we are sitting in, and I'll show this picture.
Yeah.
There we are sitting in a chair, and he must have had a good time at breakfast that morning.
Look at those faces. That's crazy. Down in Grandma and Grandpa had just a 1-bedroom house. And then they had the back porch that Mom and Dad would go and sleep on. But as kids, had to sleep on. They were beds. They weren't even beds, were they? I think they were.
They were day beds, but they made they're old-timey day beds.
Right.
I call them
I don't even know what you'd call them. They're nothing but springs. I mean, you had a little material there.
You would move. Well, it has one on her porch. You would move them so there would be a chair during the day or a couch, and during the day, and then you could adjust them so there were
lay down and make a bed
at night.
You remember how we'd get woke up in the mornings?
Tell me. You tell that.
Every morning we'd be sound asleep. Of course, we came in late. That was late for us, 10:30 at night. So we were sound asleep. But the next thing we knew, all of a sudden, this mountain would fall on us and wake us up. And he was always laughing. Grandpa always laughed. That's my grandpa. He weighed probably close to 300 pounds, something like that.
His name was Lonnie Moulder.
And he'd come in and he'd sit on us. I mean, seriously, sit on us. I don't mean sit on part of the bed. He would sit on us. Well, of course, with this spring, it just went down and all that. But that's how Grandpa would wake us up in the morning. They were early risers. They got up really early on those days.
And he wouldn't let us sleep all day. He might have been up an hour or so drinking coffee and chewing tobacco. But then it was time for us Slusser kids to get up and start our day.
Yeah.
And so he might say something to us. Come on, get up, kids. We didn't get up. He was there sitting on us.
Yeah, he was. One of the things I remember is when we went downtown. Now, we call this downtown. We're talking, what, 3 stores, 4 stores, more, maybe 5 at the most. And we'd run down there where Grandpa, he'd be sitting down there with all his friends, all his buddies out on a bench out in the front of one of the stores. And as we went by, he'd take his cane and grab one of our feet and laugh. I mean, fall, and he'd laugh. So I remember that about Grandpa, too.
Yeah,
I don't remember that much about Grandma. I just remember some things about.
yeah, she was usually home fixing the next meal.
Yeah.
And Dad and Grandpa would go down to Max Creek and sit on the spit and winnow bench in front of the post office with his buddies. And if we ran by, he would reach out and trip us.
Yes, he
we were
would.
just little kids, and we just go sprawling. And then he'd laugh at us
He
and
thought
say,
that was so funny.
"That's my girl."
That was so funny. Remember the old stove? They had one of the things that the old men would sit around and spit on. And you could hear the sizzles going down the side.
That was in Charlie Idson's story. Charlie Idson's store. Right in the middle was a pot-bellied stove. And come the fall, the gentlemen of the town would sit around that pot-bellied stove, and there were rockers and chairs and benches around that stove. And like Phyllis says, most of them chewed tobacco. And so when they got ready to spit, that stove would be glowing red down at the bottom. And so when they got ready to spit, they just spit on the stove, and it would just sizzle down the side.
Do you remember what the townspeople called us? It just dawned on me. Junie's girls.
Junie's girls.
Remember? We'd go down there, and of course they knew Mama as June back then, and her name was Martha. But I remember them going to town. Oh, Junie's girls are in town. Yeah, Daddy loved to sit down there with Grandpa and those guys. He knew them. Well, Grandma Slusser and Dad and them lived down there for a short time, too, down around Max Creek.
Well, and if you think about it, there aren't too many people to get to know. And most of them were probably relatives.
Either that or living out in the country, and you see them on Saturday when they come to trade whatever it is. I mean, it was an old-time town. I mean, really old-time town.
Do you remember when we would go to Max Creek and staying with an aunt or an uncle? Can you tell me about, say, Aunt Mamie's house, for example, when we were little kids? Or Aunt Ruby's house when we were little kids? Do you remember any of those things?
The main thing I remember about Aunt Mamie's, it was out on the highway. And Highway 54, what we have right outside Cheney, ran all the way down to Max Creek. That's how we followed it. And then it ran through Max Creek. And so we couldn't get lost if you didn't go off Highway 54. But I remember Aunt Mamie's house. The main thing I remember that is just saying goodbye. I mean, or hello. We'd come in, always have to honk. And then all of us kids would jump up. Of course, we'd been traveling 300 miles. We'd jump up and know we were close to Max Creek because we were at Mamie's house. That's about the only thing I remember there. Do you remember any stories about inside? Do you?
Do you remember the night? I remember this. Do you remember the night Mom and Daddy had gone up to Aunt Ruby's and Uncle George's to play cards? And it was a Saturday night. Probably was Easter weekend. And we were going to go to church the next day. And we stayed with Aunt Fern. Now, this was when Aunt Fern lived just a few houses from Grandma's house there on Highway 54. It was before they bought the house. I call it the house up on the hill by the church.
Right.
It was before then. And we needed to take a Saturday night bath. Well, Uncle Eldon and Aunt Fern didn't have indoor plumbing or electricity, either one. So here she had Carl and her son, Carl, our cousin, and the 4 of us kids. And so we had to take baths. So she heated up the wood-burning kitchen stove. She really got it hot. And she put some big pots on there and filled them with water. So the pots on the stove were boiling with water. And in the meantime, she took a galvanized tub, big galvanized tub, and put it in the middle of the kitchen floor. And for us girls, she took her kitchen chairs and backed them up against the galvanized
Yeah.
what was it?
Wash tub. It
Wash
was
tub.
actually a wash tub.
Galvanized wash tub that she'd set on the floor. She put those chairs, their backs to them, and she hung quilts
Mhm.
over them so us girls would have some
A
privacy.
little privacy.
And Phyllis at that time probably was no more than 6,
Probably,
7.
yeah.
So we started with Phyllis because she was the oldest, and she got to take her bath. Well, first of all, Aunt Fern would take some boiling water and pour it in the tub.
Mhm.
And then she had a hand pump for water at her kitchen sink. So she pumped water in a bucket,
But that was all cold.
and that was cold. So she added cold to the boiling water so that it got to where Phyllis could get in the
Mhm.
tub. And so Phyllis got in first, stripped naked, and got in the tub and did her washing. And Aunt Fern would help us if she needed to.
Right. She'd help. I remember her pouring water over my head.
Do you?
I didn't even think about that till now, but I do remember her pouring. That's how we rinsed our hair, was she'd pour the water over our
And then
head.
when Phyllis got done, I remember Aunt Fern said the kitchen was just off Aunt Fern's bedroom. And she and Uncle Eldon had a feather bed. So she said, she handed Phyllis her pajamas, but don't put them on because it was cold and it was Easter. I don't know, but she said, here's your pajamas, Phyllis. And Phyllis took those pajamas and ran to the bedroom and jumped in the feather bed. And that's how we finished drying off. I remember that. So then it was my turn.
Getting dressed in the bed.
I was next in age, and she did the same thing with me. She did with Phyllis.
I'm anxious to see the finished product.
So I was next, so I got in the tub and I washed myself, but she washed my hair
Mhm.
with soap.
Yes.
And then she poured water over my head to rinse it. And then I stood up and she handed me my jammies, and I ran to her bedroom and jumped in next to Phyllis. And I actually put my jammies on while I was in the bed.
Yes. Yes. All right.
So we took our baths when we were in Max Creek. When we went to Max Creek, we took our baths. And that particular night, Aunt Fern worked her way down, all of us girls first, worked her way down to Lonetta, and then it was Carl's turn because he was the oldest boy.
Right. Right.
And then after
He was your age, wasn't he? Or was he older than
No, he
you?
was months.
So I was thinking he was your age, yeah.
And then it was Tommy's turn. Poor Tommy, he must have bathed in some pretty dirty water.
Oh, yeah. That's all right. He was always dirty. You couldn't tell the difference.
I suspect she emptied some of that water when it came
I'm
to
sure.
Tommy's turn.
I'm sure.
Because while they didn't have running water and she pumped her water, they did have a drain.
Yes.
So I'm guessing she'd take the bucket and take some old out
and put some new in. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure she probably did. And Carl, remember that. Was it at Aunt Fern when he was asking those questions about the houses, remembrances, of those things that happened? Was it Aunt Fern's or was it Grandma